Hello, gentlemen. Brexit maybe is the most important thing in 21st century. I know you have a long history living in this country, and you know Chinese very well, and you know UK very well. I want to know your opinion. And so, it's a good thing or bad thing for the relationship between China and the UK. What's your opinion, Bandit?
Well, I suppose it all boils down to how you define good and bad. I suppose I should provide a little basis for my thinking, which is that since World War II and the dissolution of the British Empire, the UK has been a bit like a planet which has come adrift from its orbit. And it has had three stars trying to trap it in a new orbit. Those three stars being the United States immediately following the war, also the British Commonwealth following the dissolution of the British Empire, and then the as was the European Community when Britain entered it in the 1970s.
I think the history you recall are too long. Matt, can you give some impact on our trade relationship between two countries?
I guess the defining factor will be what kind of deal the UK will cut with the European Union. Whether it will be a hard Brexit or soft Brexit. That will define the future nature of relations between China and the United Kingdom. If UK has a full divorce from the European Union, then of course it will seek more partners in the international arena, one of which is obviously China as the world's second most powerful economy, or whether it will get closer to the United States and then kind of follow the footsteps of the US Trump's administration's China policy. So that will be the defining thing.
So UK is just the number 8 largest economic partner to China. So it's not so important for this country. I mean China.
Well, I think the percentage will probably go up. The point I was earlier trying to make is that I think the UK is sort of going to fall into China's economic slipstream. Trade with the United States is actually not that significant either. Most, and also with the former countries of the British Commonwealth. So I think it's fairly inevitable, and the whole direct train link between Yiwu in Zhejiang province and basically Barking in London, I think is going to become quite an economic lifeline for the UK in future. Obviously, the trade relationship will be more important for the UK than
I
China.
think in the past, when Chinese government they value the role of UK in European Union because it's a very important part in European Union.
Absolutely.
Is that right? So, and the Chinese government need a very important country acknowledge their market status.
That's right. Actually, China, of course, needed a friendly face in the West, and the UK was providing that. And then it was also backdoored to the European Union for China. What will change is the diversity and scale of the trade relations between China and the United Kingdom, but it will not wane. I mean, certain sectors will be affected. For example, the financial sector, London being the financial capital of Europe, was an attraction point for Chinese banks and financial institutions. But even after a Brexit and the financial capital of Europe moving to either Frankfurt or Paris, China can still get certain points from the UK, such as financial regulation, and because China is carrying out a substantial financial opening up.
Matt, I mean in EU Congress, today I think Chinese government do not need the support from UK because the country is left the union. What's your opinion about that?
Well, I think probably Germany will step into the UK's shoes here. Obviously, it's much closer geographically to China. It's a more important trading partner, and I think that will just further solidify Germany's leading position and cast the UK more into the shade. But I think the relationship is unlikely to be based so much as on finance as on pure goods, trade in goods and other services.
Then I mean that in the past, when China valued UK's price, UK is a very important role in European Union because I need your support in European Union Congress for supporting us. But today, the circumstances change. So, Xi Jinping government, this generation leadership of China, they value geopolitical much more than economic, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the UK will always punch way above its weight diplomatically. That's been a fact for the last 500 years, and that's not set to change. And there's also the aspect of the unique historical relationship between the two countries, which has often been, thorny and belligerent. But there is a certain, there's almost a family relationship that is developed.
I guess we have to remember that the Britain couldn't provide the necessary support China sought, even when it was, and it is still fully part of the European Union. For example, the European Union still doesn't support China's position as a market economy within the World Trade Organization. So actually Britain's influence within the EU was limited. And is limited even before the Brexit. So therefore, after the Brexit, there won't be much change because EU has more institutionalized policies which won't be affected by member states like Britain, only Germany being the exception.
I remember you mentioned the financial sector, the cooperation between China and UK, but I still remember a lot of UK very important financial sectors also have cooperated with Chinese institutions, such like Hong Kong Exchange. They just merged LME, London Metal Exchange, and I also remember the UK Reserve. They sell the gold reserve to other countries. So. I want to know what kind of regulation rules and the regulators China can invite some people from UK or implant some regulator rules to this country.
Well, China is carrying out a comprehensive financial market reform currently, so it can learn a lot from the British experience. A lot of regulations. For example, recently China has accepted a certain international standard in declaration of tax information for individual incomes, which is European and Western wide. So Britain can contribute a lot in those areas to Chinese financial institutions. Plus, after Britain without the European Union, there will be more need for economies of scale like China, so the British institutions will be keener to cooperate with Chinese financial institutions in many respects. And Britain has also very established regulatory bodies from which China can get some experiences.
I think probably the most significant contribution Britain can offer is its experience in privatizing national industries in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s.
But in China, lots of economists, they said, they wrote lots of stories about that. The rules made by UK or made by Anglo-Saxon people led the Western world failed. Today, maybe circumstances show the truth is like that. Maybe you disagree with me. How can Chinese people, Chinese company, borrow these rules from Anglo-Saxon world to China again? Will we repeat the failure happened in the Western world?
Do you mean the political failure?
Political or economic failure?
Well, they're linked. Democracy is a very problematic form of government. I mean, Socrates was a vehement critic of that form of government. Obviously, it's got its definite disadvantages. I mean, we could say the current administration in the US and the whole Brexit thing really highlights its flaws. China's obviously declared itself firmly opposed to that course. You look at the shenanigans, say, that go on in the Taiwanese parliament.
But today, China declared herself China Dream.
Yeah.
So, Matt, do you think China can borrow these rules directly from UK, US to China?
I guess China doesn't necessarily seek such borrowing. Chinese decision makers and policy makers often emphasize Chinese characteristics of this country. So basically, when implementing certain policies, whether financial or economic, they always try to adjust them to the circumstances of China, what we call in international relations and Latin terms sui generis, which is very China-specific conditions. So they can borrow, if any such thing will be in question, they can borrow positive sides and the aspects that have been successful in the West, and then mix and blend them with China's own circumstances and conditions, and then create a fusion that could lead maybe a third model for the world.
But I think maybe at least in one sector, Brexit is maybe very good for Chinese people. But from individual world, I think maybe it's a very good thing for Chinese people. I mean, the personal investment can happen in UK because they do not have any rules from European Union. Do you think UK government will set such a policy for Chinese individuals, maybe in immigration, in investment to UK?
Oh, absolutely. And the Chinese investment is going to be crucial and also very advantageous for Chinese investors, since the pound is obviously going to drop precipitously, and that's going to make investment in the UK considerably cheaper. And yes, as you say, the lack of EU regulation or the reduction of EU regulation is going to spur the UK government to institute corporate tax cuts.
So your Chinese friends show their interests for moving their assets from China to UK.
Well, of course, Chinese people are seeking new and secure ways of keeping their investments and then increasing their portfolio in different ways, and then naturally they look out for options that are not available in China. So therefore, they will look for ways to invest in the UK as long as the UK would make it possible. I remember when I was studying in my university in London, the Chinese students often complained difficulties and obstacles they have encountered even in opening accounts as a legally resident students in the UK, and over time that has changed, and it was the same for visa policies applied to passport holders of Republic of China. It was much more difficult for them to get visas in the past, but now it's much easier, and there are many policies supporting easier policies for Chinese tourists to come to the UK. I guess we will see a similar trend in the financial sector as well. The UK will be more welcoming since they will divorce from the European Union and seek new sources of funding for its economy.
Right. So maybe in the future, when the issue happens, UK is not anymore a gateway for Chinese government or Chinese company enter the European Union countries, but become a door for Chinese individual move their investments and their seeking their new opportunities in UK.
Absolutely.
Am I right?
So it's a new market. The
Thank
sky's
you.
the limit.
Gentlemen.
Thank you.